Thank you, Melinda. It's a pleasure for us to be here this evening. I'm Janice Poda, and as Melinda said, the topic of tonight's webinar is to talk about professional learning, specifically as it's discussed in ESSA and how it's to be implemented in schools and districts and states throughout our country. If we can go on to the next slide. Every Student Succeeds Act was signed into law in December of 2015, and it reauthorizes the Elementary and Secondary Act, where the great emphasis in the act is on excellence and equity for all students. And in particular, the component about professional learning and how important that is to teachers and leaders and others who will be implementing the components of ESSA. So with that background, I'd like to introduce you to the other panelists who will be speaking tonight. First is Stephanie Hirsch, and if you go on to the next slide, please. Stephanie is the Executive Director of Learning Forward. She started her career as a teacher in grades 7 through 12. And she has also been a school board member in Richardson Independent School District in Texas, the same district where she taught. And she's been at Learning Forward for a number of years. Also, we have with us Jess Wood. Jess is also a former teacher. She taught middle school and also was a literacy coach. She worked for the District of Columbia Public School System, where she led observation and feedback training for teachers and others in the district. And now she works with Education Council to support states and districts in improving the ways that we recruit, develop, retain, and evaluate teachers and leaders. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jess, and she's going to review the objectives for this evening. Jess? Jess, are you there?
I'm here, but I don't think anyone is. Are you guys able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay.
And we're on this objectives, and we would like for you to introduce them to us, please.
Absolutely. So if we go to the next slide, thanks everyone for this opportunity to talk with you this evening. So we're hoping that by the end of this session, you're going to walk away with a few things. First, if you're here on this call, we imagine that you really believe in the power of professional learning in advancing educator quality and student learning. So we're going to continue to discuss the critical role that professional learning plays in improving educational outcomes for all students. Part of that conversation is going to focus on the role that standards play in that area of action. We're also going to discuss a framework that states and districts can use to consider the kinds of conditions that need to be in place to foster effective professional learning, because we want to use that as our foundation for how to approach ESSA and how to use ESSA as a critical moment to advance professional learning in states and districts. And then last, we're going to ensure that by the end of this call that you get some answers to your questions about the role of ESSA in the role of professional learning in ESSA and this competition specifically. I think are we ready to go to the next slide?
Yes. Next slide. And Stephanie, if you would give us the process that we're going to use tonight with the agenda.
We're having trouble connecting Stephanie. If you could continue, okay, and I will keep attempting to connect her.
All right, thank you. So our session tonight is broken down into 4 segments. First of all, we're going to talk about the new vision for professional learning that's described in ESSA. And we're also going to dig deeper into what ESSA says about professional learning across all of the sections of the new law. We're also going to share with you some frequently asked questions that will clarify the issues and opportunities that you have as you start writing your applications for the competition. And then finally, we're going to talk in more detail about the preparation that will be needed for the competition. And so we hope that you'll also participate in the question and answer section that we will have towards the end of the webinar. And if you'd like to ask questions, which some of you have already started doing, please write those questions in the chat box, and we'll make sure that we either answer them during the webinar or after it's over. If we don't get to all of them, then we'll put them on the website and under frequently answered questions so that we can make sure that we address those questions for you. Going on to the next slide. This one is about effective professional development and some of the components of professional development. First of all, we want to emphasize that the primary strategy for school systems is to ensure that all educators continue to increase their effectiveness. And we think this is especially important as teachers and leaders begin to look at the new requirements and components of ESSA, and also as states take the opportunity to exercise more input into how they operate their accountability systems, what assessments they're going to use, how they prepare teachers for this work, and continue to help all the employees of the school system to increase their effectiveness. The number two is that the vehicle to improve really encompasses many different aspects of professional development. It can be done individually, as a member of a team, or to address school-wide performance. And this is a way to think about professional learning a little bit differently than we have in the past, where the majority of professional learning has been in groups of teachers, and it's, in some cases, it's been one size fits all. And so we see this as a real opportunity to use ESSA as a vehicle to improve the kinds of individual performance that a person has in their classroom, their team's performance, as well as the overall school-wide performance.
Stephanie, are you on now?
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Great.
Oh, yay.
And Stephanie,
thank you.
I will gladly turn it over to you to finish talking about this, and I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice, and everyone. I've been able to hear everything, but you haven't been able to hear me, and I've been trying to reconnect, and I think we'll see if maybe this time that you can see that I'm there and that you know that I'm online. So, Janice, you were doing just great. So I appreciate the setting the stage for the important conversation that we're going to have. And basically, the slide, as Janice went through it, lays the foundation for why we think talking about the role of professional development in ESSA to achieve ultimately the goals of ESSA is so incredibly important. So, Ryan, let's move to the next slide. So we can talk all day about, what is effective professional development, but for just a moment, let's step back and say, so what do we think it looks like? And for me, in its purest form, we think about it in terms of a school where teachers are learning and solving problems together through a continuous cycle of improvement, and they have time to do this important work every single day. So we'll go to the next slide. And this kind of work doesn't happen by just people sitting at the table and launching into a conversation. It really is a deliberate process. And there are a number of ways that learning teams can work together. And in front of you, you have Learning Forward's cycle of continuous improvement, or others may know it as a cycle of inquiry. That is one way to kind of guide these powerful conversations and the powerful learning that can occur when teachers are given this time to work and learn together. Some of you may be engaged in similar work, and you may be following cycles like lesson design or action research. The most important part of this is that it's not let's sit down, have a conversation. It's let's sit down and be deliberate about the problems we want to solve and the learning that it's going to take to solve it. And let's be deliberate about what we need to learn and how we're going to learn it and how we're going to measure whether our learning had the impact that we were seeking. So let's go forward, Ryan. And I also want to recognize that not all the learning that teachers need and want to do can occur just solely in this learning cycle, that there are other times for teachers to learn in other contexts. And so there really are three fundamental purposes of professional learning. The first one being about for individuals. There are things those of you on the call want to learn in order to move along perhaps the career continuum. There are things some of you want to learn on this call that were identified as part of your annual growth plan. And so we refer to that purpose as the individual purpose. Then there are things that we collectively decide that we need to learn together, either at the team or school. And, you know, I would advocate that. I hope that at both those levels we're using some sort of cycle of continuous improvement. And then the third purpose of professional learning is when we adopt a program and we want to see that program implemented with fidelity and across multiple schools or across multiple grade levels. And so it can be a new curriculum, or it can be we've decided as, you know, a system we're going to implement AVID and all the teachers are going to learn the AVID strategy. So those are just from the research are a good way of thinking about how we distinguish the three purposes of professional learning. Now, Ryan, you can move forward. Now, what's absolutely essential is that systems have a responsibility to build, you know, professional learning that can attend to and successfully deliver on the promise of those three purposes. So it's a system responsibility to think about what's a comprehensive system of professional learning. And let me say it's the district and the state's responsibility with all the stakeholders engaged to think about all of the components that ensure that professional learning at the individual, team, and program level all achieve their intended results. And the elements of that comprehensive system include that there is a shared vision of what does effective professional learning look like for teachers, and that it's driven by standards or principles, but something that says that we ensure that the professional learning is of high quality, that decisions about what to learn are driven by data, and that we are accountable for the results of our learning, and so we evaluate professional learning, that leaders are supported in building capacity to guide effective professional learning, leaders at all levels within the system, as well as leaders or advocates for professional learning, that resources are aligned to ensure that educators have the time, the space, the support, and the technology that everyone needs in order to be able to experience powerful professional learning. And that professional learning doesn't stop if we just go to a workshop, that professional learning is about sustained implementation, that classroom-based, job-embedded support, so that when you learn about something new, you are confident that you're going to have the support in the classroom to be able to implement, and when you have challenges, that there's going to be someone there to assist you to work through those challenges. And all of that is about managing change and making sure we're not trying to do too many things at one time. And ultimately, we can have a great comprehensive system of professional learning, and we can ensure great professional learning when we pay attention to, and we would say, the standards for professional learning. Ryan, do you want to move forward? So the document that you're looking at on the screen, this is the third edition of Standards for Professional Learning, and the standards identify the critical elements of professional learning that results in improvement in educator practice and results for students. It defines everything that is necessary in order to get to those outcomes that we seek. And what we're particularly proud about these standards is that these standards were developed in collaboration with all of the leading professional associations and many of the sponsors of this competition, and that they were endorsed by those associations as well. These aren't just Learning Forward standards. These are standards for the field. And as you look at the next slide, hopefully you are residing in a state that's either green or blue. So green states are working from the 2011 issue of the standards. They are, your state has either adopted, adapted, or references the standards in either state and or local policies. The blue states are still working from the previous edition, and that's just fine. And the gray states we need to work on. But the other question that I just ask you all to think about is, if you're in one of those states that has adopted standards, are you feeling the impact of those standards? Is somebody asking about, are you experiencing professional learning according to the standards? And is the quality, the high degree, are you experiencing high quality professional learning because your state has those standards? So let's look at the next slide. And let's think of it this way. So I want you to think about one professional learning experience that you've had in the past, and potentially one that hopefully was a positive one, that you felt like it influenced your practice big time and you could see great results in the classroom. Or if you want to, you can think about one that, was not helpful to you and you really wondered why you were there. And as I quickly report to you or give you a quick overview on the 7 standards, if it was successful, you'll see evidence that all 7 standards underlie the experience you had, and that's why it worked. And if it was unsuccessful or useless to you, you'll see that the standards weren't present in that experience, and that's probably why that experience was a failure. So in terms of the standards, we talk about the importance of leadership and leadership support and leadership presence and leadership advocacy so that when you go to implement what you're learning, that you know that the leadership is behind you. We also talk about, as I said before, resources, time and technology and personnel to assist you in implementing new ideas. We talk about data in terms of data informing the decision you'll make, and data helping you to know whether your learning is having any impact on your practice and your students. We talk about learning communities, not trying to change in isolation of your colleagues and building shared responsibility. We talk about designs. Do you experience in professional learning the kinds of practices that you're trying to implement in the classroom? We talk about implementation and the support that teachers receive in the classroom in order to implement the changes that they're trying to make with their students. And we talk about outcomes. The bottom line is, are we clear on what our students need to know and be able to do? And is that driving what we need to know and be able to do? And then finally, how we'll learn what we need to learn in order to implement in the classroom. So I hope that while you're considering your responses to the ESSA, the questions in the ESSA competition, that you'll be thinking about how this information on the standards, and there's plenty of other information about it on the website, can be helpful to you in designing the professional learning that we want all educators to experience. I tell states when they adopt standards that, you're making a promise to educators. You're recognizing what's effective professional learning, and this is what you want everyone to attain. So if we can move forward, ultimately, those are some things we invite you to think about. Now we're going to hopefully be able to engage everybody in the call. and with a little quiz that will introduce some other opportunities that you have to think about as you respond to the questions on the application. So we have 7 questions. Jess and I will be commentating the quiz and commenting on the answers, and I'm going to give you the first one, and Ryan's probably going to tell you how to vote. So here's your first question. So there is a new definition of professional learning in ESSA, and all of these terms below are included in that definition. So which of those terms is most important? Choose one.
So you should have the survey poll in front of you, and you choose one and hit submit.
So Ryan, are the responses coming in?
They are coming in, yes.
Great. And can we see the results?
Yes, I'll give you about 5 more seconds to finish, and then I will close the poll and publish the results.
Great.
All right, everyone's in. Just processing.
I know it takes a few seconds. Okay.
And you should now be able to see the poll results.
I cannot see poll results. Oh, there they are. I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, the biggest answer here was no answer.
Sure.
So I hope that maybe some of you are on the phone and you're not able to answer, and we understand that. Job embedded was the next highest number, and yeah, we're trying to get more job embedded professional learning. So it probably isn't fair to begin the quiz with kind of a trick question, but I will tell you all that the answer for me, and you can certainly justify your own answer and give yourself credit if you think your answer was better, is E, which is may include, because collaborative, job embedded, data-driven, and classroom-focused are all within the first 3 sentences of the definition. And for those of you who are most familiar with federal legislation, they often put like what shall be at the top of something, and then they said, and in addition to what shall be, there are all these other things that may be included. And so for my purposes and my advocacy work, I'm saying to everyone, everything before the may is a should. So your professional learning, teachers' professional learning, to be consistent with the law, needs to be collaborative, job-embedded, data-driven, and classroom-focused. And we should use that lens as we think about how we're going to leverage our dollars for professional learning to support educators. So as I said, we have 7 questions, and keep track of your own score. Jess, do you want to, let's see if we can hear you now and get question 2.
Great. So at the beginning of the webinar, Stephanie outlined some actions that states and districts can take to foster impactful professional learning. And our second question focuses on the first of those, using ESSA to support a shared vision and standards for high-quality professional learning. It's a true or false question, and it asks, true or false, states can establish priorities for Title II spending and ask districts to align their plans with this vision or priorities. So go ahead and answer true or false. I imagine people will be able to do this one pretty quickly.
Yes, they are pouring in. Give you about 5 more seconds. All right, the poll is closed.
I'm not seeing the results just yet, but I imagine many folks have been true. And that is indeed right. In the past, past, states have been encouraged to establish priorities and ask districts to show how their plans for Title II dollars align with those priorities. So it's a really great opportunity for states and districts to view this moment as a fresh start. It's an opportunity to signal to districts what the state's priorities are, to use data from across the state to identify the most high leverage, impactful things that could be happening to improve professional learning, and to model to districts how to use that data to create a comprehensive plan. Not the plans that we may have seen in the past that are really programmatic and try and break all of these funds up into silos, but something that's going to really think systemically about are we going to work across these funding sources to improve the quality of support that educators receive. We'll head to the next question.
Okay, and you all will notice on the left side, we've tried to pay attention to those critical elements of a comprehensive system. So, and by the way, 66% of in the last question got the answer correct. So that was good. The question 3, the use of Title II funds must be informed by data and stakeholder, teacher, principal, community member feedback, true or false?
All right,
and
give
so
you about
Ryan,
5
are we
seconds. You're still pouring in. All right,
Thank you
I'm
for
gonna close the
taking
poll.
time to vote. Let's see. Okay, and the correct answer to this one is yes on both fronts. So I encourage you to think about what data do we collect and what data do we want to begin to collect to help us have better information about where we should focus our professional development time and our resources. And then how do we want to engage, how do you want to be engaged as a stakeholder, a key stakeholder in the system? How should others be engaged? One of the things that we have been advocating is that engagement not just be a one-time event, but that engagement occur throughout the entire implementation of ESSA, no matter how long that lasts. So we encourage you to think about what that would look like and how you would see that as most helpful to you in the field. So very good, 60%, again, got that one correct. Jess?
Our fourth question also focuses on assessment and evaluation with data. This is another true or false question. ESSA requires that Title II funds are spent on evidence-based initiatives. If an initiative isn't supported by experimental or correlational studies, there must be ongoing evaluation of the initiative.
Okay, give you about 5 more seconds to answer. All right, closing the poll.
This one is another tricky question, so I'll be very interested in the results. Because ESSA does have this new definition, evidence-based, and it does require that many of the uses in Title II are evidence-based, but not all are required to have this evidence-based. But indeed, the ones that are locally based professional learning, those do require evidence-based, and that's where the majority of professional development dollars from Title II go to. So this definition of evidence-based is going to be really critical as states and districts develop their plans for how they're going to use Title II for professional learning. And I'm seeing about 60% of our participants identified as true. So ESSA outlines 4 tiers of evidence, and they range from, in the top 2 tiers, the types of studies that make it into What Works Clearinghouse. And then in Tier 3, correlational studies. The last tier, the 4th tier, are what we're calling strong theories of action. And for this group, ongoing monitoring and evaluation is required. So the thing that makes this tricky, and the reason why this answer may change over the next year, is because ongoing evaluation isn't yet defined. So this may be something that Ed decides to define later or provide guidance around. But right now, this is a real opportunity for states to push evidence-based thinking in professional learning spending. Asking districts, what's your evidence base for your professional learning initiative, may help target funds to higher quality professional learning. And because this new ongoing evaluation requirement isn't yet defined and may not actually get defined, it's going to be up to states to decide how to define that for districts. So this is a real opportunity for states to establish cycles of reflection like the ones that Stephanie mentioned earlier on our call for the development of evidence to support professional learning, continued professional learning spending. So if states are encouraging districts as part of that ongoing evaluation requirement to collect evidence in an ongoing way, analyze it, and use it to determine whether that professional learning initiative is having an impact or needs to be adjusted to get that impact, can be a real way to help improve professional learning so that it's getting the results in teacher practice and student learning that we are all hoping for.
And Jess, I would add to that we really want to hear from teachers in the competition how they want it defined, and that their voice in all of this is going to have a great deal of influence on what we hope is that through the competition that what teachers share will influence how states ultimately define this. I think the vast majority of professional learning that occurs at the school level is going to have to meet Tier 4. And I think we want to be accountable for the professional learning that we want to be able to report on the impact of it. So thinking more deliberately about how we collect data to show impact and how we improve based on that data and implement cycles of improvement are going to be key to the future of effective professional learning and the allocation of these dollars. So I think there's a lot of great opportunity in here, and I know we can continue this conversation over the next several months as this gets defined. So that was great, and 60% got that correct. Item 6. Item 5. States may now elect to use up to 3% of local Title II funds to improve school leadership. True or false? So I'll give you another second to think about that. So most states are defining school leadership in terms of teacher leadership and principal leadership. But this is the first time that states can actually choose to keep 3% of what has been allocated to the district to design a strategy to support statewide development of teacher and school leaders. So if your state was going to retain that 3%, what would you want it to look like? And that's another key possibility, an opportunity in ESSA. This is particularly important in areas where you have limited funds to begin with, or your Title II allocation may be so small that you can't accomplish as much with it, and it may be better to have something powerful designed at the state, of course, with great stakeholder involvement in that design so that we can increase the access to great support for teacher and leader development across the state. So it's just a new component of the law and something that I know we'll spend a lot of time talking about when we ultimately are working with our finalists around their final plan. So 60% got that one correct again. Congratulations. Number 6, Jess.
So our next question focuses on the alignment of resources to our vision for effective professional learning. So in this question, you should be able to select multiple options.
And the question asks, select all titles which contain funds which can be used for professional learning. So we'll give you a few more minutes or a few more seconds on this one, so select as many as you like choice. Ryan, do we have most responses in?
Most, yes. I can't see if people are allowed to select multiple, but that's how it was set up.
It looks like it is for me, at least.
Great. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll.
So ESSA allows for professional learning uses of dollars from all 4 of these titles. In Title I, a lot of the funds can be used for school improvement to help support the lowest 5% of schools as the state defines them. In Title II, as you all know, there's plenty of sources for professional learning. Title III focuses on professional learning for educators who support English language learners. And in Title IV, there's dollars to support data analysis and continuous improvement cycles, but also time for educators to collaborate together for schools and extended day. So each of these provides opportunities for professional learning. And something that Learning Forward and the sponsors behind the competition are really interested in is thinking, instead of using these as discrete funding streams, as they have been in the past often, to really think about how to use this as one source of funding to improve professional learning and the supports that teachers and leaders receive. So you might, for example, think about how you can use those dollars to focus on schools in the most underserved communities, for example, and really improving professional learning systemically in those, or some other alignment that you might have to your vision for effective professional learning. And instead of thinking about, we've used these dollars for this purpose in the past, and we have these dollars over here for this other purpose, to really think comprehensively about how all of those dollars can be used in the most effective way to align with your vision and actualize it.
Great answer, and it's exciting that a lot of people voted multiple times and recognized that all of those different titles give them sources of funding to achieve their vision for professional learning. So that's nice. The final question. So how frequently will your districts need to report on their use of Title II funds and how it's improving educator effectiveness? So will they be required to report annually, every 2 years, as the state determines, or this has not been decided yet? You know what, Jess? You may have to answer this one because I forgot.
I am very excited to.
I think I know the answer, but I may not. So let you answer.
Ryan, do we have all of our responses now, or nearly all?
Couple more seconds.
Okay. If you, as we're closing the poll, you may be wondering how frequently states need to report on their use of Title II funds. That is annually. But the correct answer, has the poll been closed? It's looking to me like it hasn't just yet.
Closed. Yes.
Okay.
So the correct answer is C, as the state determines. So states will get to decide how frequently districts need to report how they're using their Title II funds to improve educator effectiveness. So this is a really exciting opportunity for states to, in determining the frequency and the process for the reporting around these funds, is to think about how do we go beyond compliance with these reports, and how do we make this the kind of process that spurs continuous improvement and reflection. We really believe that it's important to put emphasis on this reporting document because this is an opportunity for districts to think about how their investments actually improved educators' practice and student learning. Too often we see that the focus is on the plan and not necessarily its impact. So this report can play a really critical role in that continuous improvement process that Stephanie described earlier. Something that's going to be really important in this is thinking about how your state defines educator effectiveness, because that's not currently defined in the law. So this is something that states and stakeholder groups are going to want to be, or states in particular are going to be wanting engaging their stakeholder groups like teachers and parents and principals to define that term for what is the state's vision for an effective educator. And so this is going to be a great opportunity for the state to put a stake in the ground using all the feedback it's collecting from communities and critical stakeholders in our schools and districts.
And one of the most important reasons we're running this or hosting this competition is to be able to get the benefit of everybody on the line and everybody who will watch this webinar later, your input in the competition, because these are such important issues that will drive state policy for years to come. And we really believe you are the ones that are going to have the input that's going to be most helpful to them. So we look forward to receiving that input and reading about it in your applications. So let's see how well you did in your quiz. So Ryan, if you'll move to the next one. So I know that we had a few people that got all 7 correct, and so we claim you an ESSA innovator. If you got 5 or 6 answers correct, you may never thought of yourself as an ESSA regulator, but you may be ready to regulate. If you got 3 or 4, then you were a good ESSA student. And 1 or 2, aren't you glad you signed up for the webinar today? So we do have some resources to assist you to go a little bit deeper in learning about this. Jess, do you want to talk about the couple of additional resources that we have for them that we'll post after the webinar?
So could we go to the next slide? So we know that navigating federal legislation is never easy. And so we also realized that there were an incredible number of opportunities within ESSA to advance professional learning. And so we did a very close reading of the bill, and we've compiled in one document all of the connections to professional learning that we see. And we organized them by those conditions that Stephanie outlined earlier. So you'll see at the top of your screen, for example, we said we need to use ESSA as an opportunity to establish or strengthen our vision for professional learning. And so we've identified what you're seeing here is examples for opportunities to strengthen that vision within the definition for professional development. And we've done this for each of those learning system elements, and we found nearly 10 pages of opportunities in total. And what we've done in each of these is we said, here's an opportunity to strengthen or establish this learning system element. We identify the relevant part of ESSA so that you have the actual language. And then I said, in as plain a language as possible, why does this even matter? And then in the last column, you'll see that we identified state actions and local actions that we encourage states and districts to explore to be able to actually advance professional learning through ESSA. So that's a document that will be circulated after this webinar. And let's go to the next slide. We know also that a lot is going to happen within the next 2 years as ESSA gets implemented, and we wanted to try to help make sense of what that timeline might look like. So 2016 is going to be a very busy year, but I want to call attention to a few things. So in summer 2016, and potentially even earlier, maybe as early as this month, U.S. Ed is going to issue regulations on consolidated plans. And these are the plans that states will put together to say how they plan to move forward with implementing ESSA across its titles. And so we think there may be questions, it's fairly likely that there will be questions that ask about states' plans to improve educator effectiveness and to improve teaching and leadership, maybe even about professional learning. But we're all going to want to watch out for those plan questions to see what it is that states are being asked to focus on, because those will be an opportunity potentially to really get states to sit down and reflect on their vision and strategy around professional learning. In summer, we're also going to be potentially getting some guidance. So far, the department has said that they want to issue guidance on homeless youth, students in foster care, and English language learners. And they have not made a public commitment yet about professional learning or teaching and leadership, but we think there's probably a strong chance that it will happen either this year or next year in the next administration. Another critical thing is that the plans that states have previously made under waivers, under No Child Left Behind waivers, those will expire on August 1st. And so this is going to be the time for states to really be doing that stakeholder work to begin developing their plans and engaging with parents, teachers, leaders to begin forming those plans by the end of the year, because by the end of the year, those plans will likely be released for public comment. So let's go to the next slide. This work doesn't end in 2016. It's going to continue into 2017. And this is important because in 2017, we'll likely receive more guidance, but it's also the year in which the new funding streams that Stephanie mentioned earlier around leadership, for example, will come into play. So this includes that 3% set aside. It includes the new formula for Title II, which adjusts state and local funding to really prioritize states with the highest number of underserved students. And it's also the time in which competitive grants are going to be awarded. And there's a new competitive grant focused on prep for principals. The teacher and leader incentive funds will continue, and those competitive grants will be awarded beginning in summer 2017. So all of those funding streams start to come into play in 2017. If you have any questions about this, don't hesitate to ask. That's where we're going next. All right, let's go to the next slide. Oh, go ahead, Janice. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Janice, I think you're going to take a little bit of time for questions. I know we're not going to have a lot since we have some other information to share, but go ahead.
Yes, we've had several questions come in, and the first one has to do with knowing what the differences are regarding state support versus district initiative and self-support. And so I think they're asking, what is the state's role in this and what is the district's role?
In terms of how do we I guess I need more information on that one.
Okay, in terms of how they're going to implement professional learning and what the state's role would be in giving guidance to the districts versus the district taking the initiative and providing their own support.
Okay, so let me try a little bit of that. So the state has to write its plan for professional learning, and the state may, in fact, identify some priorities, and the state may say to the district that we want you to align your priorities for professional learning with the state. The second thing that the state will probably do is give some sort of framework or planning template or guide to the local districts to make sure that they answer certain questions around professional learning that guide them through the process of determining how they will use their Title II dollars. The former requirement for a needs assessment for Title II funding has been eliminated, but states are probably going to replace that with something that, like I just mentioned, which is more of a planning template to guide more thoughtful discussion, data analysis, and stakeholder engagement at the local level. So those are some of the distinctions. In many ways, the districts will be replicating many of the processes that the states will implement for themselves. Jess, would you add something?
And folks are asking about the kind of technical assistance that might be available. That is an allowable use for states. And an important outcome that might come out of this competition is the advocacy that might happen at the district level to get that kind of technical assistance to ensure that districts are being supported in the way that they strategize around professional learning and ensure that it's impactful. So, I mean, that might be something that participants want to focus on, is ensuring that districts and schools get that support around how they plan for professional learning by advocating for it, since it is an allowable use of Title II.
Okay, maybe, Janice, I'm afraid that we've got so many things we need to finish up on. What I'd like to do is promise everyone that we will capture all of the questions into our frequently asked question document on our website. You can also put it there because we're collecting questions for the competition there and responding to them as we receive them. I will tell you that the document that you're looking for that Jess referenced, we will post on the website after the webinar this evening. And all of you, I don't see any question that we won't be able to answer. It's just a matter of giving us a day or two to get answers to all your questions. So do not hesitate to ask these questions. These are great questions, and I wish we had another hour to work through them. So I think I need to, Janice, I'll turn it back to you, and you tell us what's next.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. And I just wanted to also say that in our webinar on the 25th of May,
right,
we will have some opportunity to answer some of these questions as well. If the FAQs or the information we put on the website isn't clear, we'll be more than happy to do that. So that's another opportunity for us to do that. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Melinda George, and she's going to talk about some of the specifics about the competition. Melinda?
Thank you very much. And I have to say, the questions that are coming in, the number of applications that have been downloaded, the interest is huge, and we really appreciate all of you taking time at the end of your school day to come and to be asking these important questions. So, Ryan, if you don't mind moving to the next slide, you're probably saying, so where are all these resources located again? And so I just want to take a moment to point you to this website that's on the screen. It's the Agents for Learning Competition website, and it has the application there. It has the FAQs that Janice and Stephanie referenced. It has a whole list of ESSA resources that have come in from our many partners. And it also has the first webinar, the archive from the first webinar that we did on April the 27th. And soon it will also have this one recorded and available there as well. So that's a good place to be able to go and look for upcoming information. I also want to mention in that top bullet where it says coming soon, the scoring rubric. One of the things that we want to do is to provide to you all the rubric that scorers will be using when your applications come in during that time period between June 10 and when we announce the finalists on June 21st. And so we will be getting that rubric out to you all. Our partners will let you know when it's there. NCTAF and Learning Forward will send a message out when it's there. But it's coming very soon, and we look forward to making that available to help you in your application process. So if we could go on to the next slide. I just want to review the competition timeline, some important dates. And the first one is a bit about what Janice mentioned. Ryan, if you don't mind going to the next slide, and that is that on May 25th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to do a web chat. This one is open to anyone that wants to join, but it's particularly targeted for competition participants. So you may be writing your application with your team, and you may have questions about some of the ESSA information that's been shared, or questions like the ones that are coming in through the chat box. You might have questions about the application, or by then you'll have seen the rubric, and you might want clarification around that. You may want to know more about Chicago. You may want to have questions about what this can mean in your state once Chicago is even over. So we invite anyone to come and join us. We're very excited that some of our partnering organizations are going to come on and help us to answer these questions. So this will be less of a formal presentation and more of a chance for all of you to interact with us and with our partners to be able to try and answer any questions. So mark your calendar and watch for the WebEx sign up just like you did for tonight, and we will look forward to that chance to spend time with you. So that's May 25th at 6 p.m. And then, Ryan, I think the next slide is back to the timeline slide. Just a reminder that applications are due no later than 8 p.m. Eastern Time on June the 10th. The applications, as those of you, many of them have been downloaded, are currently in a Word document. We encourage you to complete the applications and then send them in as an email attachment. And so that's how you actually submit the applications on June the 10th. By June 21st, the finalists will be announced and notified so that we can begin to make preparations for you to come and be with us in Chicago. And then the trip in Chicago is actually July the 21st and 22nd. We'll do one day where there'll be coaching of the teams around putting their presentation together, and then the presentation of the teams, presentations by the teams of their plans will be before a live panel of judges, but it will also be webcast nationally so that everybody can tune in and watch those final presentations. Next slide. We could not be doing this competition without the tremendous support of many sponsors and partners who have come together to help us. And so we want to really thank our sponsors. They've been true partners. They have helped us with input to the application process, building the content for the webinars, disseminating information to all of you about the competition and the webinars, and helping us to design the scoring rubric. Many of them are also going to be joining us in Chicago to help with coaching and in some cases with helping with prizes and recognition. And we really appreciate that all of the sponsors have been helping us to spread the word about the importance of listening to teachers as we implement ESSA. So thank you to all of these amazing organizations for their support of this competition. And finally, I'm going to just go to the last slide that I have, and that to say that we hope that you will continue to put questions. Today we're capturing all the questions that you're including in the Q&A box. If questions come up as you're working on your applications, you can use this email that's on the screen to ask your questions directly to us. One of the things that we're doing is building that FAQ page in an evolving fashion. So if a question comes in that we know might not only be helpful to the person that is looking for the answer that day, but might also be helpful to other applicants, we will post it on the FAQ page. So we want to make as much information available to as many people as possible. So Janice, I will turn it back to you.
Well, thank you, Melinda. And I want to also thank Stephanie and Jess for being with us tonight and for providing this information to all of you. Now it's time to take action, and there are several different things that we'll be doing. We'll be posting the slides from tonight so that you'll have the ability to download those to be able to use in the future. We've also recorded this webinar so that if you want to listen to it again, you're welcome to do that, and it'll also be on the same website as Melinda mentioned earlier. We think it's important for our policymakers, for school leaders, in all aspects of the system to hear from teachers about this issue. As Stephanie said earlier, it's really important, and when Congress wrote this legislation, they specifically required that we have teacher input and stakeholder engagement about the plan that states will be writing and districts will be writing about the implementation of ESSA. So it's really important that we hear from you. We value the thoughts that you have about this. You're the ones that are in the classroom, in the trenches, dealing with the challenges of being a teacher or being an educator today, and we want to hear from you about what your needs are and what your recommendations are. So make sure that you use our Twitter lines to tweet about this and to let others know about this important work. Also, we want to just take a moment to thank all of you for giving up your time this evening to learn more about ESSA and specifically about how professional learning is described in ESSA and what the requirements are for the implementation of that in the next few months. So we appreciate the time that you've given. We appreciate your questions, and we really appreciate your interest in helping inform how we implement professional learning going forward. So with that, I'm going to close the webinar and thank all of you for being with us once again. Good evening.